Walker's alternate is in attendance, and it's Tina Johansson.
Thank you.
Any other alternates come in? Very well then. Let's move on to approval of the minutes from February 26th. If you've had a chance to review them, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Accept.
Second. Yes.
Yeah, eventually.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections?
I was already given a couple by Rebecca.
Are they
And I'll
substantive
make-
changes?
No,
or-
they're spelling in a duplication of something.
Okay. Any other changes to the minutes? All those in favor of approving our minutes from our last Senate meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we will move on to public commentary. Do we have anyone here to address the Senate?
Yes.
Why, what do you have for us today, ma'am?
The Senate will be asked to vote today on a resolution concerning an issue in language arts. Because I am not a senator and I will not be here for the discussion, I want to share my comments. This issue is not only about the photocopying and distribution of an ESL department survey in the language arts faculty boxes. This issue is also about the hurtful and cruel comment written about an English department faculty member on the ESL department survey. Specifically, this hurtful and degrading comment was written about me. Any discussion that does not include the impact of the hurtful use of my name on a department survey is a form of silencing. The cry for collegiality and the condemnation of so-called illicit behavior rings hollow because it does not resolve the fact that I have been openly degraded. However, I have not attempted to bring a resolution to the Senate condemning this action. I have not taken up the Senate's time with this issue, nor have I attempted to use our 10+1 as a tribunal on faculty behavior. If the Senate body deliberates on this issue, I would ask that the senators consider how they would feel to see their own name used in a hurtful, degrading way on a department survey. I ask the Senate, which of the actions carries more weight? The humiliation of a colleague on a department survey, or the fact that someone found this humiliating evidence and copied it for all to see? Recently, the now former entertainment chief of Sony Pictures had her emails hacked and publicized. She responded with a public apology. She graciously stated that although she does not condone the hacking, she recognizes that her emails were hurtful and she apologized for them. I have had no such apology about the hurtful and degrading remark about me on the ESL survey. I am not demanding an apology now. I don't believe in doing this. I only ask that during the discussion, each senator imagine how he or she would feel to find their own name used in a degrading way on another department survey, regardless of how that information was made known. Thank you. See you later.
Anyone else for public commentary? Seeing none, any faculty announcements and invitations? Yes, sir?
Faculty announcement. I received from our dean an update about Gary Zager, and I want to let everybody know that Gary is planning on returning to school after spring break on April 6th. He is feeling very good, much better, much stronger, and our division can't wait for him to come back. And I wanted to make sure that we shared that with you.
Fantastic. Yes, ma'am.
I have an announcement. United Faculty is having their elections, and I hope you all vote
Very well.
by the 27th.
By the 27th, okay.
They will be sending them via, if you have not, I haven't received mine yet, but I mean, they sent out the ballots via mail, so they should be coming.
I didn't respond to the agenda because I found something at FISH meeting yesterday. I'll add to next meeting. And it has to do with, is there a company policy on electronic device? And question came up because the watches and everything now, and what do you do about, it gets to the point where you tell the students leave all electronic devices at home or in a box or in your car, or worst case, we take responsibility during the class for those, which could open us up to problems. So just want to seed it a little bit that you might start thinking about what you think a good policy would be as far as students coming into your class with any type of electronic devices.
Thanks, Jesse. Any others? All right, then let's move on to special reports. Associated students, Tanya.
Yes, ma'am. The results are in.
And?
I am your newly elected vice president of student organization. We also have 4 new senators, 4 new activities coordinators, and Ms. Tiana Buddes is our new student trustee. And Ryan Jostenbaum is our executive vice president. So the results, it was all decided and went over, and special elections, all that good gravy. And final done, we're in. Okay, thank you.
Any others?
Also, I want to, tomorrow is Kinder Caminata, where we have the kindergartners come in and honor Cesar Chavez. And we're looking forward to that event on tomorrow from like 8 to 12. We'll have a lawn full of children. So we look forward to that on tomorrow. And I want to make a special plea to those of you that are any faculty. My goal is to have as many clubs active on campus as we possibly can. And if someone approaches you as being an advisor, would you please take advantage of that opportunity? I'd appreciate it. In honor of Women's Recognition Month, our president is hosting she's got ballots going out, Women's Recognition Awards. And I look to see some of your names on here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. United faculty, are you going to report for a United faculty?
No report.
No report, okay. Staff development.
Okay, we just completed our second funding cycle. The award letters haven't gone out yet because Bob needs to double check them. And then the final funding period will close on April 10th. It was originally April 8th, but because we have an event, a district staff development event on that day, we decided to change it to the 10th. So as soon as I get the award letters out, I'll send out another call for more applications for the last funding period for this year. And we increased. We went, I think, from 6 applicants in the first funding period that we held in November up to 20. And we had an adjunct person and several, across disciplines. So all the way from auto tech to social science to health science. So I think we're on the upswing there in terms of getting the interest going. March 21st is the strategic conversation here on campus, so I encourage you to attend if you can. If you didn't register, there is walk-in registration on that day if you want to participate. March 24th. April 8th, the district staff development is holding a technology fair, and I can't remember the name of it, but the sign-up is on the district staff development calendar sign-up. It is emerging technology used in the classroom and in instruction, and some of our own people will be roundtable facilitators, as well as people from SCE and Fullerton. It's from, I think, 3:30 to 6 o'clock, I believe. And that's my report for today.
Did you get enough facilitators for the strategic conversation? There was a call that went out.
Yes, I believe we did. We may have more than we need, but, last minute things happen, so that's a good deal.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Curriculum committee.
Are you going to speak to the meeting that we had relative to baccalaureate?
You go right ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I have good news to report, which is that we are completely in compliance. We had a email letter from the chancellor's office. We have completed all 19 of the ADTs that we could possibly offer on this campus. They're all active. Last one is coming through, which is for journalism. We're completely in compliance. There are no other ADTs at this point in time that we have programs that would support an ADT. So we are finished with that task for the moment. Tina and I, Kathleen, went to a CTE conference in Palomar. And the conference's focus was related to task force on workforce development, job creation, and strong economy. And these were a series of regional conversations about related to goals relative to CTE programs, consideration of reconsidering perhaps even the apportionment model ratio of how we fund CTE. I talked to Steve Donnelly about that. I said, what do we really mean by it? You pragmatize that, what that would mean and how realistic that would be. He said, well, as you know, CTE programs go through Perkins and through a number of grants that they have to apply for. It's a big paper trail. It's a big investment of time for department coordinators and CTE programs up and down the state, as well as the divisional deans. And one of the considerations is, why do we have to go through this paper mill? It's very difficult for those to be vetted. It takes a lot of work for the people that are the vetting agencies, including the chancellor's office, to see who should get the funding, who and how much funding they should get. Why not just consider the possibility of changing the ratio of apportionment and perhaps eliminating using those in place of or in lieu of those kinds of grants, because they see growth in CTE programs being long-term, and this grant writing they do on a yearly basis is absorbing a lot of time. So anyway, to cut to the chase, I'm going to pass out to you the first draft of, let's say, proposals, considerations, and objectives that CTE faculty are considering as spearheaded by the ASCCC. This is a draft that's going to go through a revision as a consequence of these regional meetings, but this is what Tina and I and Kathleen Ryland saw, which I thought was very informative, gave me an idea of what CTE faculty and the ASCCC are thinking about in terms of the future of CTE programs, their funding, supporting counseling and instructional development. Yes. Oh, yeah, and also we have a 2-for-1 coming up for Curriculum Institute. A 2-for-1, like possible, and by the way, we have show opening into the woods. Yes. So think about getting tickets to see that show. Anyway, see, I put that little plug in there. Okay, so we were told that we could do 2-for-1. So somebody from CTE faculty goes with me, they get to go for free, and you have to pay for me. So I thought that was kind of cool. So my recommendation to the Senate at this point, I'm not making a formal motion at this point, but it would be great to think about maybe having your curriculum chair, your campus articulation officer, a CTE faculty, and Donna Landis, who's a system specialist, go to this summer's Curriculum Institute, which I'm sure is going to have a focus on CTE. Okay. You and I we attended a meeting in the President's Conference Room. Was it this week? Boy, everything blends. Was last week with?
Dr. Pam Walker, Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs from the California Community College Chancellor's Office.
And Pat, this is what I remember she said. You ready, Pat? This is what I remember she said about baccalaureates. And I didn't get to go the whole meeting, so you're going to, and my 3 minutes are almost up, so if you want to add something, Joel, you better jump in. All right, she believes that minimum quals will have to go through some kind of evolution, right? Because we're talking about writing upper division courses for a baccalaureate program, so they're going to have to reconsider minimum qual categories, for baccalaureate programs. She's talking about, she thinks she's very excited about it, and she's talking about developing a group of experts to assist in the future based on this first pilot program of baccalaureates and bachelors of science programs. In other words, faculty that have gone through this pilot program may become experts and mentors to assist faculty for future baccalaureate programs. David Morse, who's your ASCCC president, is now charged with moving to protocols, assembling protocols for this, and creating protocols for this expansion. There'll be an expansion of Title V to allow for us to teach upper division courses through a baccalaureate program. And they're looking to create CSU members in a kind of advisory group for the mortuary science program to begin to tie in whatever upper division course we might write for mortuary science that would be therefore transferable to CSU or allowable if somebody decided to move to that. Am I saying that accurate? Might want credit or get credit for gen ed? I don't know what you meant by that.
That's okay.
You can talk about that. And then, the other one that's really big, which could be true, is we might have to have a revision of how we compute the chart for hours and units to make these courses, to fit the needs of these courses in terms of their course content on the upper division level that might be different from the hours and units conversion table we use for our community college courses. But that gets kind of speculative.
All right.
Each one saying, and that's it. That's all I got to say about it.
We'll move on to the academic Senate Treasurer's report. We've got 3 minutes left for work then.
I just wanted to clarify, when you're talking about revising minimum quals, would that be revising it by establishing a separate category for minimum quals for BAs, or revising minimum quals, period?
I would presume that she was alluding to expanding the chart, so to speak, making special dispensation for that kind of context. But she didn't get into the details that I remember.
It
about
was
it.
referring only to upper division within the major.
Yeah, that's what I would presume.
The minimum quals that we have for the gen ed are currently sufficient.
In other words, could somebody with a master's degree and/or baccalaureate hypothetically teach an upper division mortuary science course based on their professional experience and/or their master's degree? You know what I mean? Do we need to create a special categorization new categories for minimum quals to fit these new baccalaureate pilot programs?
That's what I'm asking, is it a separate category?
Well, I would think it'd be new categories, but she was not, again, we didn't get into explicit, it was more of me receiving information rather than slowing her down to have a Q&A for me.
The minimum quals for CTE faculty at the present moment are an associate's degree in 6 years or a bachelor's degree in 3 years. That minimum qual will change for upper division major coursework within the CTE program. She doesn't have any issues that she is aware of for the minimum quals on the gen ed upper division because our current minimum quals meet that requirement. So, for gen ed faculty.
Well, that's what I'm looking at, though, to see, because, for example, our minimum quals would be the MA. Are they going to still allow the MA, or are they going to insist on a PhD because of the upper division?
No, the statement was that the gen ed upper division, no issues with minimum quals. The minimum quals would be with the CTE major because you cannot be teaching in a baccalaureate for a CTE field with only an associate's degree. So it would change the minimum quals for the CTE major,
Would there be an
but not.
expansion in that area
Yeah.
to allow for that with work experience?
So.
I would also like to, on the task force, they talked about it from bringing the students from high schools and the college and bringing them together also for the student success area. And they talk about the quals there because, you know, as a high school teacher, you cannot teach, you may be able to teach college, but most of us wouldn't be able to teach high school because you have to have a little credentialing from there. So I think that they're looking at the entire package and everything as far as the states, the way they're doing it now, and making some very major changes in the way things are being done.
All right, Cypress College Foundation.
Lynn said that she's not going to be here. The only thing that she wanted to pass along is that Americana was a big success, made $115,000. She'll probably talk about that when she reports again, but she wanted to pass that along.
All right. Basic Skills Committee? Anyone from Basic Skills? All right. SLO? And Program Review?
We put together our final draft report for the year, and we sent it out for everybody to review, so I should have it probably by the next academic senate meeting. So we'll be done.
Fantastic. District Council on Budget and Facilities, we met on Monday, and you won't believe what one of the items of conversation was that caused a lot of consternation. Reassign time. They have been working on that extended day budget allocation model for, 3 years now. And the draft proposals that were presented to the District Council on Budget and Facilities on Monday included a line item for a 5% per campus, 5% of the full-time faculty, as a backfill for reassigned time. So for Cypress College, let me give you just an idea of what that means. The district would backfill us for 10 positions, 5% of 200 faculty, 10 positions. We currently have 21 full-time faculty equivalents on reassigned time. So that extra, the other 11, would come out of our campus reserves, campus funds, and we're already at $800,000 over budget for extended day. So it's coming back to the Council on Budget and Facilities next time, and we will end up talking about it even more. Their question, much like the question that we had here in Senate, is what's the comparison between Fullerton and Cypress? For Fullerton, it would be 14, almost 15 reassigned time backfill for their campus. They currently have, I think, 17. So they would be real close to being completely funded out of the district, backfilling for their reassigned time positions. We, on the other hand, would end up having to pick up the excess. So, yes, ma'am.
Did the issue come up in the discussion that we had talked about last time, that many of the positions that we use reassigned time for faculty our administrative positions at Fullerton, and thus that skews how it looks. Did that get discussed?
Yes, it did,
And what was-
as well as the question that I brought up, because they said it's up to the campus to decide how they want to allocate their reassigned time. And if they believe taking faculty out of the classroom to do these administrative or clerical tasks is a good idea, that's a local decision. Forgive me, I'm sounding almost sarcastic. Anyone catch that? Just a little? Okay. Because I asked the question, what about the outside accrediting agencies that mandate for us the reassigned time for our CTE programs? And they said, well, that's a Cypress decision to have those CTE programs. Okay. Let's go with that. So forgive me for my sarcasm, but that doesn't seem appropriate. The district decided years ago that Cypress would host more CTE programs than Fullerton. So maybe we should have some comparability, to which the argument was, that's why it's 5% across the board. See, it's equal. It's like, ugh. Anyway, the way that they addressed it was this, and I almost want to quote, but I'm not quite sure that I'll get the right context on this. Faculty are hired to teach. Done. They're all like, you shouldn't be taking them out of the classroom for reassigned time positions. That's essentially what the gist was. So if the campus decides to take faculty out of the classroom, the campus needs to allocate the funds for it. So it's an interesting conversation.
I
So
think
the
that's done.
district is saying that it really wants all of these to be filled by administrative positions then.
That was the sense that many of us outside of the room were shaking our head at, going, wow, okay. Then we were just shaking our head. It was crazy. We were just like, okay, I get where you're going with this. It's either have administrators do it or don't have the positions. And I don't think the second item is an option. So, but it was an interesting conversation. We decided to table it so that they could report back to us with the new charts. Because I have shared with you folks the charts on the 2012 allocation of reassigned time. And by the way, I should mention, the reassigned time does not include what is mandated by collective bargaining. So the UF reassigned time is not the consideration here. It's the reassigned time for grants and for staff development and for SLO and basic skills and academic senate. It's all of those items. But I will tell you, compared to Fullerton, we have a whole lot more for department coordinators in terms of reassigned time than Fullerton does. And that just makes sense with the number of CTE programs we have that have a mandate. You have a program director and they receive a comparable amount of reassigned time for their duties that they're required to do.
I just want to point out a couple of things. Number one, at least in our division, when we had Jeannie Miller at distance education, she was being reassigned, I think 80 or maybe even 100%. She was replaced by an adjunct instructors, which you realize is a lot cheaper than what putting another instructor in would be. In many cases, you'll find that their bill for reassigned time isn't necessarily a full-time employee. As a matter of fact, even if it's a full-time faculty person, it's overload, which means it gets paid at a cheaper rate. So that reassigned time is actually being funded a lot less expensive than if you had a full-time instructor do it, or even worse, if you had an administrator do it. It's going to cost us a lot more money.
We have this actually agendized later.
Okay. I'll move on. President's report. I have 10 minutes. He's going to hold me to it because he keeps telling me, you're over time, you're over time. Okay, I need to appoint 2 people to the Campus Diversity Committee. I had 2 people that indicated an interest. One is Cherie Dickey and the other one is Ambika Talwar. I would like your approval to appoint those 2 to Campus Diversity. Anyone? Move approval. Do I have a second? Fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
Fantastic. No opposition? No abstentions. Okay. I didn't get anyone for the Institutional Effectiveness Coordinating Committee yet. I keep sending out that call. Didn't get anyone for our District Technology Coordinating Committee. I keep sending out that call. I did get one person for the Instructional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative, and that's Kathleen Ryland. She and I will be part of the team. Is there anyone else that, you forgot to hit reply? Yeah, I didn't think so. So I would entertain a motion to accept Kathleen Ryland
So moved.
for the IEPI.
So moved.
And a second? Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, moving off that one. In terms of the update on the baccalaureate pilot program, I will be traveling to Sacramento on Monday for the Board of Governors meeting. Of the 15 original programs, there are only 12 that are being forwarded on Monday. I'll send around the nice little letter from the CSUs that flambastes a couple of programs for duplication and almost goes to the point of telling them that they weren't being forthcoming. Let me read this particular thing to you. It says, this program, and we'll leave the program name off. This program duplicates CSU's Multimedia Graphic Design Baccalaureate content. The CSU Multimedia and Graphic Design programs were established when the conventional term for the study of interactive media design was multimedia, and when the title interaction design was rarely used. The proposal states that a search of the National Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, IPEDS, indicated that no public university offered a program in interactive design. That's because there's no such program title in their database. So they were saying, not so much. And then the other one that they're not putting forward is out of a different school that says, guess what? This almost follows identically to Cal State LA's Industrial Technology Program and Automotive Curricula and Career Preparation. So they are not forwarding two of the programs because the CSUs had too much consternation over them, but they are forwarding ours for final approval. So I'll send this around if you want to read it. It's kind of interesting. In terms of bond construction, if you haven't heard, Measure J is not going to be appealed. They decided in our favor. The litigants in this issue have presented a, what shall we call this? I don't know what word it is other than, we're really sorry that we brought you to court. Please don't sue us. Because we're entitled to recoup attorney's fees because they lost and we won. So they said, how about we don't appeal and you don't ask for attorney's fees? So they're currently drafting a settlement agreement with the litigants, but I'm out of time.
No,
Shucks,
not yet. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Oh, cool.
Something else.
Oh, cool. Then I will mention to you the self-study chair call for faculty went out. Did everyone see that? It came out from the Institutional Research Office and Phil Dykstra. The deadline for applications is March 31st. We will have to put out a call for 2 faculty to serve on the selection committee. But right now, folks, I'm interested in knowing, do you know anyone who will be interested in heading up our self-study? If you do, please reach out to them and encourage them to put in their name, their letter of interest. This is an important position, and we need to select them by May 7th. They will be appointed May 8th, and they will be working over summer. So hopefully you have someone in mind that you think would be really good as our self-study chair, and you'll reach out to them and say, hey, by the way, folks, we really need you. And then hopefully you'll volunteer to sit on the selection committee because you reached out to them and asked them, would you do this? And then sit on the selection committee and, okay, we'll see how that goes. The spring resolutions for our plenary session are now available. I will send them out to you electronically. I just got them yesterday. I didn't see anything in here that would cause a lot of issue with us, but if you want to take a look at them, I'll send them out. We will need to agendize these for our next meeting to have a discussion over which items you might have issues with that you'd like to see pulled or that you definitely would like to see us vote in favor of. A couple other items. We have a new provisionally appointed trustee, Jacqueline Rodarte. That happened on Tuesday night. She's a lovely young lady from Anaheim. She got her associate's degree from Fullerton, a political science degree from UCLA, and she's working on her single subject teaching credential. It's an interesting process to have them interviewed in open forum and to have the candidates answer back and forth. One of the most interesting answers that us on this side of the table They asked one of the candidates to explain the mission, vision, and values of the district, and she saw, I couldn't find that. So, yeah, took like all of a second and a half to pull up the district webpage, and it was there. So the look.
Tutor her on how to
Yes, absolutely. It was interesting that someone would say, I couldn't find that. It would be one of those things that you would anticipate.
So then they made her the provisional person?
No. Different candidate. We also have an interim vice chancellor of finance and facilities. This is C.M. Brombat, and he and Fred and Karen and, oh, good Lord, Lorenz and Rajin, and they all have history with him. They've worked with him at the Coast District, so they're very familiar with his style, and he's our new interim, at least for the next 4 months, while Fred Williams is our interim chancellor. We have on Monday a coffee with the chancellors and trustees at Fullerton College. We will be hosting coffee with the chancellor and board of trustees on Monday, April 20th. So this coming Monday, March 16th at Fullerton, and then for us, April 20th. I think I have only one other thing. We need someone from the Senate who might be willing to present on the function of our academic senate during the new faculty seminar on Tuesday, April 14th at 4 o'clock. I would love to do it. I won't be on campus that day.
What day of the week is it?
That's a Tuesday, April 14th at 4 o'clock. It's, Pat Gaynor did it when I was part of the new faculty seminar, and it's giving an overview of what the Academic Senate does, what we're here for, how we can help faculty, how faculty can get involved. So if there's anyone that is interested, I will ask, please consider. Yes?
I'd be willing to do it. I've done it a couple of times.
Fantastic. Your name was already in here. But I didn't want to be presumptive.
So much for having any say in my life.
But I appreciate
What my plans are in October of 2017.
See, it makes it sound so much better when you volunteer for what we've assigned you to. Sorry. And I will say, and that concludes my report. So let's move on then to institution set standards for student success. Kathleen?
Yes, here's a draft response that we kind of came up with. Brian, Mark, Jolena, and I met, and we reviewed, you got them in your mail, the institutional set standards, and you'll see that Phil gave us the 2013, 14, and 15 tentative, well, he gave us the report and then asked if we wanted to change the goals. But in looking at the goals, we've only met 2 of them in the last 2 years. And they're not weighted. So that means that if enrollment is down in 2012 like it was, that you could expect that 2 years later we would have fewer certificates and degrees awarded. So I did a quick search and found that there's a lot of different benchmarks that we could use that would weight the percentage of students who get a degree or who transfer against some sort of variable such as FTES or the first year students 2 years later, that kind of thing. And what we decided is that we would submit this to institutional research and ask them to come up with a recommendation after they look at some of the criteria that's out there. So I listed some of the ones that I came across, and this was just a quick search, so it wasn't meant to be comprehensive. But for example, we could use the California Community College Scorecard, we could use the National Center for Education Statistics, we could use college measures, the best schools, there's a college excellence program, or the U.S. News and World Report. Some of them have the same methodology, some have a little bit different methodology. So we thought it would be best to ask academics research to give us a recommendation. In the meantime, we thought we should just go ahead and maintain the goals that we had from last year and put them forward until we have a better mechanism for evaluating our performance. That's it. Did I leave anything out?
So there's a motion, you didn't hear it that way, but there is a motion for us to set our institutional set standards for ACC GAC reporting at the same level they were last year. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right.
You from the first.
So, yes. Madam Maker of the motion, you have first chance to speak to it. You have spoken.
I did.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
What's the penalty? Well, it's point of inquiry. I'm asking, what is the penalty of us not doing this until we have it figured out better?
We would be out of compliance with our reporting. I don't know any other penalty other than that.
It's tied to a lot of things. Phil needs to get it so we can keep the process going along. But there's going to be state standards that are going to be set. And this is probably going to be something where we're going to adopt the state standards. The state is basically going to come up with standards. If you set institutional standards that are lower than the state standard, they're going to mandate that you do the state standard. If you choose a standard which is higher than the state, there's no payoff for it. So it's sort of like you have this choice, but really you're going to choose the state set standard, unless it is low. But we're assuming that it's not going to be.
It is not.
It's actually going to be perhaps quite rigorous, but that's the deal. So we're sort of buying our time, giving them that, and what takes place at the state level may supersede all of this.
And since he mentioned what's going on at the state level, the Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiative that Kathleen was just appointed to attend as a member of the team from Cypress College is meeting on Thursday, March 19th. And one of the things that they will be discussing is what level we will be setting these at the state level for all community colleges. So right now, ACCJC says, Cypress College, tell us what you want it to be. We're going to hope to meet those, the thresholds. You'll notice that we haven't met many of them. But we're, as a faculty, we're committed and we're going to meet them. If we end up as a state system with higher levels, then those will be the levels that we will be held to. And in the future, we could potentially see issues with funding if we don't meet the levels that have been set by the state. June 30th is the deadline for the IEPI to set the state levels, which is why they're meeting March 19th. There are several other meetings in San Diego after that, but this is a big issue. It's outcome-based. Are we meeting the parameters for which we're being funded? And they're asking us to be accountable.
I just have a question about the IEPI. Is there any indication what measures or instruments they're going to use and discuss next week?
Yes, ma'am. I would be more than happy to share those. I thought I brought them with me, but the Legislative Analyst's Office did a higher education budget analysis, and the parameters are in the LAO's office report. So I thought I brought the report with me so I could share it with people. But many of them are metrics that we are already very familiar with. And they are not asking for anything that is astronomical at the moment. What they're looking for right now is a baseline of where the schools think they could be, and then drafting it off of that. But the IEPI that meets next week on Thursday will have a better sense and be able to report back to that. But the current parameters are listed in the LAO, the budget, Higher Education Budget Analysis. It's a 76-page document, and I think it's on like page 73. It's a nice little diagram in the lower left-hand corner. But I'll share it with those. I thought I brought it with me, and I apologize for not having it.
So we have it covered for that Thursday meeting with?
We have one person. We have a second person. We wanted 5. Fantastic. There's still room available.
They serve lunch? No.
I think lunch is included. And the drive is not far.
No.
It's at Fullerton College. So it's not very far at all. All right. So since Craig has the floor, are you speaking in opposition to it now that you have your question answered?
No, I guess not.
Okay. Therefore, there's no others to speak in favor. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor of maintaining our institutional set standards at their current level, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstention.
1 abstention. Thank you, sir. Motion carries. Moving on to distance ed coordinator position, I will tell you, I spoke with Monica Jackson. Thank you. About the distance ed position, I have spoken with Jeannie Miller, I have spoken with Jessica Puma about separating out that position into an IT position and then the faculty coordinator position. And it really needs to go through the distance ed advisory committee. It is an advisory committee, it is not a standing committee. So there is right now an initiative, if you will, to create on our campus, if the Academic Senate were to support it, an actual distance ed committee. Right now, the advisory committee is not well attended, so we can't say that we have the voice of faculty in terms of where they stand, should we separate the positions. We know that the people who have held the position previously would support separating it out, IT versus the faculty coordinator, but we cannot say that other faculty would step up if we were to separate out the positions. So there are two things that Monica and I discussed, and I would really like a sense of the Senate on whether or not we should establish an actual standing governance committee for the distance education program. And secondly, are we committed to actually establishing a distance ed program? Right now we have a collection of courses by faculty who are interested in teaching their classes online, but we don't have a concerted effort towards a program where students would be able to move through it and say get a degree or get a certificate. There isn't a lot of collaboration between the different providers of the online classes that would create for students a method to get from point A to point B in a relatively short period of time to get a degree or to get a certificate. So I would ask that we create a subcommittee to look at these two items if the Senate believes that they are important items to discuss. So what is your pleasure, Senators?
I think we should create a committee.
I think they're important items to discuss.
Fantastic. So I have a motion to create a subcommittee.
Second.
Fantastic, and a second. Now, the question is, who should serve on this subcommittee? I would anticipate that you would want those people who have previously held the position of distance ed coordinator to serve on it, but who else would be important for informing that decision as to whether or not we should have a concerted distance ed program where we would be able to market it to students that you could have your associate's degree if you follow this pathway, enroll in these classes?
I think we need to have people who have taught the distance ed classes, right?
Okay.
People have a strong background in distance ed teaching.
Okay.
There also needs to be representation from all the divisions within the school.
Okay.
Also, Jolena, it seems like you're trying to do two different things, like that distance ed program, or splitting it with the IT thing?
No.
Okay.
The idea of the distance ed program would exist regardless of whether or not the position is split between two people. One who has the IT background, one who has the faculty background or the instructional component. The concept is, right now Cypress College does not have a distance ed program. We have a collection of classes that are primarily faculty who are interested in teaching distance ed. We don't have a program, so a student could not decide, I want to get a degree from Cypress College, and here are the classes that I'm going to take online or hybrid that will get me to that degree. We don't have a program per se. And Monica comes from the for-profit side where they had institutionalized programs. If you take this sequence of classes, in 2 years you would have your degree, or in 2 semesters you'd have this certificate. So the question becomes, do we as faculty of Cypress College see ourselves as a player in the distance ed program? We would be competing with maybe Coastline College, which has a huge distance ed program, and they do actively advertise that you can get your degree entirely online or in a hybrid format, but no on-campus significant requirements. So we have to ask ourselves, is that something we're interested in?
Okay, just for clarification, so I'm understanding what we're talking about here. It sounds as though we're trying to promote a distance ed program without having a committee, or are we trying to establish a committee? If we're trying to establish a committee, I think it's up to the committee to determine whether or not there's a program. I mean, wouldn't that be the purpose of the committee?
Yes, to answer the two questions, should we divide the coordinator role into two, and should we make a concerted effort towards designing a distance ed program? So those would be the charges of the committee.
I would support identifying a committee to look at these issues.
Okay. Anyone in particular that you believe should be on the committee other than divisional representation and online faculty?
No, because I was going to say the same thing that Keith did about making sure we had online faculty.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question when you're talking about establishing an online program in terms of the nature of this committee, because the committee obviously has to make decisions, but is the a priori assumption that the program means you will be able to get your degree all online? And if so, if that's the a priori assumption, I think that needs to be addressed as part of it, not go in with the idea that the intention is this. It may end up being that. And the reason I raise that, and I come from one of those departments for whom this directly affects, for example, in communication, we teach public speaking. And I know there are places that offer it online. Frankly, our department is appalled by this. You find 5 friends, you put them in your living room, and you speak, and you call that public speaking. We are very opposed to having that type of thing, and COM 100 is a required course. So I would be very concerned, and there may be other departments that have similar concerns. I don't know that I want this to be assumed from the beginning that it is an all online. It may be a majority or something like that, but, and I just think that needs to be articulated.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because I will tell you, if our campus does indeed decide that we want a distance ed program where a student would be able to get their entire degree online, we would have separate reporting requirements for that with our accreditors. So there are bigger issues than just whether or not particular classes should be taught online.
It's a question of the integrity of our
Yes.
program, is what we would see at issue here.
So would you want to serve on this committee as well?
No. I'll just mention that here.
Well, I will mention to you, whatever is decided by this subcommittee will come back to Senate for their approval. So it's not going to move forward without a Senate discussion.
So, I have limited time. I'm certainly happy to go to a meeting where they agendize a curriculum chair to come into it. I mean, there are concerns about line of sight, proctoring exams. These were things that came out of the distance ed, document that she had been working on before, our prior distance ed coordinator, and Jeannie Miller. So the only thing that puzzles me about it is it does require resources, and ongoing and substantial. And the only question I would have is who is going to take the leadership role in the committee to contextualize that and also take action to look for those resources. It could be rooms. I'm thinking the obvious thing that comes off the top of my head that came into curriculum committee is a big concern in the last 2 years, which is how are we going to proctor these exams online or on campus so that my dog Louis isn't taking the exam. He probably would pass it, but how are we doing that? So there has to be a context for understanding how we're going to provide the resources for a program, and who would supply that information, just simply doing it on paper.
That the subcommittee would draft for us a complete proposal as to what it would take if we wanted to commit ourselves.
And I'm just saying that the curriculum committee was not able to supply that information of how we would say, yeah, you probably should have some means to proctor it, effectively. But we didn't have the wherewithal or know to actually propose something in that context. That's not our purview to know how to do that or provide funding for that. I'm going to say it would be great if you could do that, or you do it on campus and you have to pay somebody to proctor the exam. And where would that room be, and who would do it, and what would they get paid?
So the motion on the floor would be to create this subcommittee, and clearly we've got a lot of questions that we would want them to answer. Is there anyone opposed to creating this subcommittee? Yes, ma'am.
Whenever we go to implement a new program, there's a very set parameter. You go through the occupational statistics, you go through all of this, and you make a program proposal. And it's under a department in a division. So is this a CIS responsibility, or are we doing it as a separate we're creating a new department, a new division. The committee's gonna look at all those factors, but to me, it seems like it's also an administrative responsibility to say, who's gonna manage this? Who's gonna get all the departmental time to do that? Do we have a faculty dedicated to it? It seems like it has broader than just a committee making a recommendation. I don't know.
So is there anyone to speak in favor of creating the subcommittee?
I think we need to create the subcommittee because this is the way they're headed. I mean, this is the way the state is going. And I think that it's important that we be on the leading edge and get our needs known and get out there and be able to speak to the things, the questions that we have and become knowledgeable about it because right now it's just there, but this is their goal, to work this way. So I think that to have a subcommittee would be advantageous.
Anyone to speak in opposition to creation of the subcommittee?
I'm not against the subcommittee per se, but I think you've got two things. One is hopefully a short-term thing, make the decision as far as whether you have two people for the administration versus this, I think, very long-term decision about whether it should be a program. So I think if you put them together, unless you give them a criteria that they have to first figure out what they're going to do as far as the coordinator is concerned, whether it should be a technical one and a non-technical person, and then do the rest of it. Otherwise, aren't we going to be hurting for a distance education instructor after this fall?
Is there anyone to speak in favor of creating the subcommittee? Yes, sir.
I think that we should do it so they can talk about this stuff and then not have us talk about it.
Okay. Anyone opposed to the creation of the subcommittee?
I was going to say the same.
Okay,
Has the subcommittee deal with these issues, or would you be okay with that, Kathleen?
Yeah, I mean, I am,
Because those are
I just
important.
hope they do.
Okay.
It's real important that those things have to be worked out.
Like, I don't
Our
want to-
time for this issue has come up. The motion on the floor is to create the subcommittee for them to look at these issues. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions to the creation of the subcommittee? I see one abstention, two abstentions. All right, it passes. We will create a subcommittee. I will put out a call to distance education faculty looking for people to represent each of our instructional divisions, and we'll see where we go from there. The next item is the staff development coordinator position. I sent out to you folks a draft of the professional development coordinator selection process. It does not say staff development coordinator selection process because the staff development committee is asking for Senate to support the change from staff development to professional development. So there were two items sent to you. One is the professional development coordinator selection process, and the second item was the job description. So I'd like to take the first one. When we come to this one. If you remember from last semester, we had an applicant who was interested in serving as the staff development coordinator who was not selected. And we ended up with Dr. Simpson filling the vacant staff development coordinator with two co-coordinators under what we would call a professional expert contract. If you take a look at the proposal, the Senate was asking for a formalized selection process to which you have the draft in front of you now. And in order for us to discuss this, I would like to entertain a motion to accept the draft selection process. Thank you. Is there a second? Fantastic. Would anyone like to speak in favor? Mr. Maker of the motion, you have the floor first, should you like it.
I'm going to say that it seems like a good idea and it's time that we move on with this process. So I think it speaks for itself. I suggest we approve it.
Is there anyone that would like to speak against the proposal?
I'd like to make a suggestion that when they say faculty member includes 60% reassigned time, this is an office clerk. It doesn't say how much time from those people. You know what I'm saying? It has 6% reassigned time for the faculty member, and then it says an office and clerical assistants. Is that full-time, part-time?
That has been an issue.
Really, that was a big issue.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to say our last staff development person, the reason it drove her crazy was because she didn't get that support. And I would think this doesn't change anything.
Okay, so would you like to make an amendment to the proposal that includes a designation of a percent position for the clerical support?
Yes, what would be legitimate?
I'm gonna get out of this conversation.
Okay. When we did it last time, there was a certain percentage agreed that never came across. Anybody remember what that percentage was?
Let me just add a tad bit of background to that. This coordinator comes with a 50% clerical support. The president's office says that there is indeed a 50% clerical support in the president's office. And the issue was that there was not a designated staff development 50% clerical support in the staff development office.
So you're saying this could be the 50% that would be in the staff development office?
If that's what you would like
That's
to
what I would
amend.
like to put in.
Okay. So,
That besides the other 50% they get from the president's office.
oh, well then, okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay,
In addition to what was the-
so,
You're going for double support,
yeah.
or, okay.
Why split it into two 50% when people are juggling? It doesn't make, I don't understand this, so.
Okay. So, are you making a motion, Jesse? And if so, what would your amendment to this motion that's currently on the floor say?
Are you saying that this already includes the 50% for the president?
Yes.
I would say this should be a 50% in the office, the professional development coordinator's office.
Okay. So would you like to add that to the bottom of the first paragraph? And that there be a dedicated 50% clerical support residing within the staff development office? Okay. Is there a second to his amendment?
Second.
Is there anyone to speak in favor? You have the floor first, should you want it.
Well, you know, we've been trying to fill this position, and we've now got two people working on it that are faculty people, when in fact, the problem was that the faculty person's time was legitimate, was fairly sufficient if they had the clerical support. I'm saying we're not solving anything here, we're just remarketing the position. So we need to do something to solve what was the original problem, was the support in the staff development area.
Actually, if you don't mind, what this subcommittee was charged with was creating the process for selection of the staff development coordinator, because somebody did indeed apply for the position and was not selected. So the Senate was charged with creating a process for selection, to which you'll notice the second, third, and fourth paragraphs deal with that selection process. But right now, what we have is an amendment to the first paragraph that would include the dedicated 50% clerical support position residing within the staff development office. He has spoken in favor of it. Is there anyone to speak in opposition?
I just had a point of information question, however you say that. Is the president's office person actually a 50% employee in the president's office who has clearly 50% dedicated to staff development? Or is it a 100% president's office person who just gives that time?
That's the way we understand it. It is somewhat, the second, that it is someone who is 100% in the president's office, who we can have 50% of the time in the president's office. To speak in opposition.
It's a question for clarification. It's just strange. I mean, I know in my area how many hours it's going to take to hang a light plot. I have no, I mean, I'm totally in favor of this, but I have no, we're recommending something. I have no understanding of how to compute those hours. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm uncomfortable voting. I mean, maybe it's 100%, maybe it's 75%, maybe it's 25%. I have no idea of what the workload is. And it just seems odd to me that we're moving to vote on a percentage of, without knowing what the requirements are. And Becky, I don't know what it is. Maybe it needs to be 100%, maybe it needs to be 75. I'm not quite sure where the money is coming from, but the computation of the percentage of time allotted should be based on something more than, for me, it seems speculative. I'm concerned, that's all. I just need to be 60, 70, what is it? That's all.
So since you're not speaking in opposition, what question would you like us to answer?
Well, I think I need some data. I don't feel like we have any data to go by which to compute the percentage. Anything, yeah, of the hours necessary to get the job done. I have no idea.
Speaking in opposition?
I think Jesse's 100% right. I don't know if I'm on the opposite or
No,
now
you'd be-
since we're all
you would
there.
be in
I
pro.
mean,
We're looking
Jesse's
for someone to
100%.
speak- We're looking for someone to speak in opposition
Of Jesse's?
of the amendment.
That would be me.
Yes, ma'am.
Only, I'm not saying we don't need a staff person for this. I'm saying, I'm not sure this is the place to put that. This is on the selection process for the professional development coordinator. That's not talking about, let's decide how much clerical support is needed by the staff development office. This is, how are we gonna choose the head honcho? And so it would seem to me that would be a separate discussion. That's my only objection to it, is I just don't think this is the place for it, because this thing has a very clear title. The coordinator selection process.
Speaking in favor?
Okay, I don't know whether I'm favoring it, but I need to speak. Basically, the fact that we're giving up our staff development coordinator for a professional development coordinator, when a staff development coordinator is for faculty to get the training that they want. If we put it into the preview of a professional development, they've taken it out of staff, they're not having staff now running it, and basically and they're not giving them support. This, to me, saying that someone is available 50% of the time, who's going to take precedence? The president's office or our professional coordinator, who isn't even a staff member now?
You're looking at the second item. We're on the first item, on the selection process. Okay. So we'll hold your comments for that one. Anyone to speak in favor of the selection, of the amendment to the selection process?
Just a piece of information, we took the process and discussed it at our staff development committee meeting. The process, not the position announcement. And our committee was in favor of supporting the process, which we talked about having 3 people from the staff development committee be on that selection committee. So just that.
Fantastic. Anyone to speak in favor of the amendment? Oh, there is a call for the question. Is there a second to the call?
Second.
All those in favor of the call for the question, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Then the vote is on the amendment only. And that would be adding to the end of the first paragraph that a dedicated 50% clerical support position in the staff development office be included in the selection process criteria. All those in favor say aye. Fantastic. Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? All right, so back to the main motion. This is the process for selection of the staff development coordinator. I put professional development because they are asking to change the title. I will remove it, put staff development if we decide not to change the title of it. But it's the process. To speak in favor of the process?
Well, no.
Okay. Anyone to speak in favor of the process? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I want to clarify, because what we're adopting now is the whole thing, including the title, right?
The only reason why I changed it to professional development was because they were asking for it on the other page.
Right.
I can move it to staff development,
Well,
what it originally
but
is.
that's what I'm trying to find, because when you look at the process, and I think that includes this, and Tina raised an issue that I think now becomes germane, and I would like to respond to that.
Okay.
But if you're talking about process being only the bottom part, that's different.
I was only looking at process, the last 3 paragraphs.
Well, but I think the issue of what we call it does become important.
Okay.
So,
Then, in front of you, if you want to take wherever it says professional, line it out to staff, because that's what it currently would be.
Point
I
of
would like to
information.
speak in opposition to
Point of
doing it.
information.
Yes, sir.
Whatever we call this thing, the process is going to be for whatever we call it, right?
Yes, sir.
So we're going to get a process, and then we're going to decide if we're going to name it something different? Is that correct?
That's essentially where I just went with this.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
This came about because the language that they use at all the conferences now is professional development as opposed to staff development. It doesn't signify a person who's not faculty or what have you. It's just, the buzz phrase now is that.
I think the problem is where the modifier is. The term that we're looking at is professional development. Professional is modifying development. It is not modifying coordinator. We're not talking about a professional coordinator. We're talking about a professional development coordinator. And that's what we're talking about is the heart of what we're doing is professional development. Period. The modifier doesn't go to coordinator. We're not looking for somebody who is a professional at coordinating. We're talking about professional development. That's why I think we should leave it as the professional development coordinator. It's what the language is there, and it correctly describes what the person does.
Yes, sir.
Could we get rid of the 60% part of the reassigned time?
That's already in the position. We would be actually asking to change the reassigned time to something else. It's already in the position.
But can we just leave it undefined in this?
It's already part of the position. It is already defined as a 60% reassigned time position. We would have to go back through the staff development committee with their deliberative processes to change it to something else.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What I said before, now I realize it's wrong, but what I'd like to do is make a change so that after we say professional 6% reassigned time, a period, and strike out the rest, because if this is just about the particular job, then when you do the support for them, that would be part of your announcement when you ask for somebody who wants volunteer for the job. So that shouldn't be here at all.
The motion on the floor is to accept the process. I would like to tell you folks, the top paragraph is actually what was already in the original announcement that has previously been circulated. That is not a change. What was a change was the process. Historically, it was the president and the academic senate president who decided who was going to be selected for the staff development coordinator position. Academic senate wanted to have a more defined process, to which the proposal is in front of you for that defined process. So if we could limit our discussion to the concept of the process, are we okay with the process? If we're going to call it professional development or staff development, it's all the process. Would we be okay to sending out a call and assembling a selection committee? We have not previously had a selection committee. Would we be okay if there is a selection committee that it includes the academic senate president, the college president or their designee, and 3 members of the staff development committee, or if they end up with a name change to professional development? Would we be okay with that selection committee? If we're okay with that selection committee and they decide to interview a candidate and find that a candidate is not acceptable, would we be okay with having a professional expert contract? So those are the components of the process. Is there anyone to speak in favor of the process? Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the process?
Again, I just want to make it clear, if we give up our rights, I mean, I understand that we don't have enough volunteers. I mean, there's not enough people that are doing the work we need to get done. But on the other hand, we have to be aware that when we start changing the names of things, it changes the way things are perceived. And and just like the state's going one way with regard to the education, with online and things like that, I think it's important for us to realize that this is one place where we can actually provide the things that we want, not what the administration wants all the time. I mean, we work for the administration, but we are teachers who have needs and wants that we have to bring forth, and I think that's important. That's all.
sounds like we still have a lot of discussion left on this item and our time has come up. So I am going to entertain a motion to, I don't want to say table because that means we bring it up at this meeting again and I don't think we'll have time to do that. But can we re-agendize this for the next meeting? A motion?
I move to set aside till the next meeting.
Is there a second? All those in favor of setting this aside?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. All right, then we'll move on to item C, committee to revise the bylaws.
I am going to request that this get moved to the next meeting as well due to a meeting that the committee has to have.
Okay. Then, second? Is there a second on the motion to move this to the next meeting?
Second.
Anyone, let's see, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed to moving this to the next meeting? Any abstentions? All right, we'll move this one to the next meeting. Item D, student use of instructional space without supervision.
Thank you. The committee met last semester, and initially we began to discuss the issues centered around the journalism department and then each of our own departments. And within that first meeting, we quickly became aware that each department has its own needs, and we needed to do some more exploring. We weren't quite sure what was is there any policy on this? So we did some exploring and found that the board has a policy, and I'm passing around some copies in case you didn't print one out. And basically I'll read you the first part, because that's the most important. During business hours, the district will be open to all individuals who have business on campus. During non-business hours, access to all district facilities is by key, if issued, or by admittance via campus security. In the case of periods of extended closing, the district will admit only those with prior written approval to all facilities. So that's the only policy that we could find. So building upon that, we had some more discussion, looked at some other campuses, and basically came to the conclusion that because it would be very, very difficult to try to create an umbrella policy for each department because they have different needs, different types of facilities. Music has a different need than automotive technology versus classrooms in the humanities building, science labs, et cetera. So this is what we came up with just to discuss today, and then we'll get any changes over the next couple weeks and vote on it at the next meeting, hopefully. But this is what we're proposing, that within their own division spaces and in consultation with their immediate management supervisor, Cypress College faculty have primacy and responsibility for setting the departmental, programmatic policies and practices for independent student activities, and be it further resolved that those activities may be conducted in instructional spaces, common areas, and any other spaces that are supportive of institutional and instructional learning objectives.
Thank you. This is a first read of the resolution. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
I thought Dr. Simpson gave us a different reason than this one in terms of instruction. I know he said it wasn't line of sight, but I thought he said that there was some other that was specifically dealing with the use of instructional space, which isn't this. Did the committee try to talk to Dr. Simpson about it?
I personally did not, so I can't answer. And the rest of the committee's not here, so I can't say that we did or didn't. Right. I can find out.
Because I thought there was. I'm not sure if anybody else has that memory about that.
Yeah, he did say that it did not require line of sight.
Yeah, I know that, and then I thought he was getting into some other area, but I wasn't sure if he was specifically quoting.
There had to be some oversight available.
Yeah.
But it didn't have to be line of sight.
Right.
The line of sight thing all comes from if you're going to charge the state for the instructional time, but if they're not charging instructional time, that line of sight doesn't make any sense.
He had said that wasn't part of the issue, but I did think that he talked in some other way that there was something that dealt with instructional space, and I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that there isn't something that we've missed. That's the only reason why I'm asking that.
Any other questions?
I really like the fact that you've given each department their own realm of responsibility on this, because it can change too, because we've done it for 15 years where we allow everybody use of the equipment, and it's only recent that a computer was stolen. So now we're kind of buttoning down the hatches a little bit. But, you know, it's on a year-by-year basis, and I like that. I think it's great.
Any other questions for the subcommittee? Otherwise, this will come back for action and a second read at our next meeting. All right. Moving on to the campus-wide golden hour. What you got for us, Joe?
Yeah, I don't have much to say. This was proposed before we left for winter break, and I kind of jumped the gun and said that I would lead it just because I work at a school that successfully incorporates it. Since then, because of winter break and I guess the chaos of the beginning of spring semester, I didn't get a lot of feedback from them, but I did get some information. I mean, they do have larger physical, like much bigger physical space to have this golden hour, and it's 1 hour every Thursday where they hold department meetings, division meetings. They allow student organizations to fundraise and all that for this hour. However, since then asking for what adjuncts, my fellow adjuncts thought about this, I did not receive a lot of support for it, because they think that if they have an hour in between classes, that's an hour they're not getting paid, an hour that they could be teaching at another campus, and that's their main line of reasoning. So until I garner or get more support from my fellow adjuncts, I don't feel right to maybe lead this subcommittee, although I didn't even know there was a subcommittee created. This is just me. So personally, I like it. I thought it was a great idea, but I have to represent the adjuncts, and so far I have not gotten the support that I need to move forward.
So until there's more information, can we drop this off the agenda for next time, and then when there is more information in the future, we'll re-agendize? Okay. All right. Resolution of condemnation of unprofessional conduct. Keith?
We had the first read, it was before winter break, right? So the second read, the date on here is off. We set it up for the first academic senate meeting, but it's taken us a while to get to it. So just ignore that second date. But I'll pass it around. I don't want to read it to people. I think you could just read it on our own, right? Or
So if we're going to be taking action on it, will you at least read the resolves for us to take action on?
Or, I could read it if we want it read out loud. Can I get a copy? Sure. You have your own copy? And I guess before I read it, I should say that we took to heart what people in the Senate said before the break, that we should go back to our division and ask what the division wants to do. So that's exactly what we did. We went back to our division, our first division meeting, we discussed it and said, what do people want to do? We came up with the idea of a vote to see if people wanted to move forward with the resolution, because we felt kind of the blowback at the last Senate meeting that people thought maybe we shouldn't move this forward. So we thought, okay, we'll just have a vote. And so as a division, we voted, and 18-2 people in our division voted in favor of moving forward with the resolution. So based on that, we came forward with the resolution. And we understood also that other people were going to maybe go back to their divisions and talk to their divisions and get feedback and see how other divisions felt. But that's the background. So I'll go ahead and read it. Whereas Cypress College has adopted core values that include collegiality and integrity, and was condemned by its last accrediting visiting team for living its values, and whereas the illicit photocopying of private correspondence between two faculty members and the illicit distribution of such correspondence to non-involved parties displays a reckless disregard for the values of collegiality and integrity, and whereas the anonymous photocopying and distribution demonstrates the lack of integrity of the offender who is unwilling to claim or accept responsibility for said actions, and whereas the anonymous photocopying and distribution undermines campus collegiality by potentially casting suspicions on innocent people, and whereas such actions belie the standard of professionalism that should be expected of all those in the academic senate environment, or academic environment, and whereas District AP 3050 indicates that employees of the district are expected to treat other members of the district and members of the public with courtesy, honesty, professionalism, and civility, and the illicit photocopying and distribution of private correspondence clearly violates standards of honesty and professionalism, and whereas while such actions may not be illegal under federal law regarding the privacy of one's mail, they display a wanton disdain for the spirit of and rationale for such laws and violate a reasonable expectation of privacy in the workplace. Be it therefore resolved that the Academic Senate of Cypress College condemns the actions of this invasion of privacy via the actions of photocopying and distributing private correspondence that took place in the Language Arts Division, and be it further resolved that the Academic Senate expresses its distress and dismay regarding the unprofessional behavior of the person or persons responsible for such actions, and be it further resolved the Academic Senate urges the administration and the Campus Safety Office to continue its investigation into the discovery of the identity or identities of the perpetrators of such egregious acts.
Keith, are you making a motion for the Senate to adopt this resolution?
I'm going to pass
Yeah,
things over to.
Are you making this
Oh,
motion?
okay. I move to adopt the resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Mr. Maker of the motion, you have the first chance to entertain any pro for your resolution. Are you passing it?
I'm passing.
Fantastic.
We brought this up a couple of months ago when it was first brought up. Time was given at the end to allow people to ask any questions for clarification. We got a number of statements. Because it was supposed to be clarification, I didn't respond at that point. I'd like to briefly respond now because I think there were some points that were raised. Mark, I absolutely agree that probably none of this would have been necessary if there had been an apology. But it's been 4 months since this took place. The person has never even come forward to admit that they did this, whoever did it, somebody did it. We would love to take an apology. I'm sure everybody would have backed away totally at this point. But since it wasn't there, that's not an option. The second thing that was raised was is this really necessary? Do we really need to take a stance on this? Those of us in the Language Arts Division believe that it is necessary. Why? Because obviously somebody on this campus believes it's okay to photocopy and distribute private correspondence to other people. If we don't stand up to that, then how do we have any idea that this isn't going to spread? We even had a member of the Senate saying in this meeting that if he had come across this, he might well have done the same thing. I think it is incumbent upon all of us to say that we believe this is unacceptable behavior. A third argument was raised that, isn't this really the work of the administration? Shouldn't they take any actions on it? If there are sanctions to be exercised, absolutely, those would come from the administration. But for us as a faculty to say, everything concerned with professional ethics, behaviors, etc., is really not the purview of the faculty. That's all administration. Is, I think, us turning our back on the responsibility for saying this is what we believe. We are then turning it over to let the administration to decide what is acceptable behavior or not. So I just wanted to deal with some of those prior arguments. You heard another set of arguments today in public commentary. Frankly, I'm a little surprised because if you look at the comments that Professor Deep made, they seem to really support the need for a resolution like this. Why do I say that? She spoke to the fact that she was extremely upset, embarrassed about cruel comments made about her, degrading comments that were made about her, etc. And I'm not going to get into the merits of any of that because that's a separate issue. But the reality is, if somebody had not photocopied private correspondence and distributed private correspondence, none of that would have ever been out there. So if she is concerned about attacks made on her, it would seem to me that they would have been confined to 5 people, but because of the actions, they went to an entire division at that point. In fact, today it went even further. If you'll notice, this resolution was written to leave out any specifics. This resolution never talked about it being the result of a departmental survey. Somebody else put that information out there. We didn't intend to have it specified there. We didn't intend to have it specify any individual. We didn't intend to have it refer to any specific comments. That was brought up by other individuals. So if the concern is that these things were said, it was spread, then that would seem to justify the reason why that action needs to be condemned. If they are hurtful, harmful to the individual, then that's why we should express our opposition to what was going on in this case. I'm not going to get into the issue of the specific comments that were made. You were told today that they were degrading, demeaning, cruel, etc. I will go so far as to say this. One of the questions on this interdepartmental survey of 5 people is a comment asking about something. The response was one word, Christie. Now, if that is considered demeaning, degrading, harmful, destructive, etc., I don't know what else we can do if we're going to say that this is not the case. I wouldn't have said that, except Professor Deep indicated that herself today on it. That was never in the resolution, but if that's going to come up, then let's consider whether this is the case and how harmful and demeaning that is to say, this is my response to what I see as a potential problem. And I think that this resolution speaks to the need to condemn illicit distribution of this material, to say that we don't believe that this is right. It casts suspicions on, as all of the whereases indicate, why these are problems in terms of a lot of different rationale. And for us not to take a stand on that is to say, I believe that we think all of this is perfectly acceptable. And I, for one, do not find any of it acceptable.
Okay, that was speaking in favor of the resolution. I'd like to remind everyone, please limit your comments to the content of the resolution, and I need anyone in opposition to the resolution.
The salient part of what you missed about Christie said is that she was hurt, but she was not going to waste our time by bringing it to us. That's the salient part. She did not want to waste the Senate's time dealing with the internal affairs of your division. Now, I have a question. Please? Has the investigation been completed? We don't know. I move to move this to the next meeting because we can't vote on something which is still open. The only thing that I agree to on this is the last one, that there should continue to be an investigation, because these are simply allegations. That's all that's being made here are allegations, and the allegations can be turned a different way. If the answer to a question, what is the worst part of working here, is Christie, that's violent. If that's what was being said, something like that. And I am not going to allow a series of allegations and accusations that are being met that are not founded by anything, and an investigation has not been completed. I am not going to waste my time in this Senate voting on those allegations and those accusations. I do not know what happened. I can't agree with the anonymous photocopying and distribution. If this was a Valentine, if this was a pithy cartoon, if this was a picture of cats with lasers, there'd be no problem. The issue is what was in it, and an effort in the photocopying and distribution to bully a colleague, smear a colleague. Now that's an accusation. I don't know if it's true because the investigation hasn't been handled, but it's a different allegation than the one being made.
Can I entertain your motion? Is
I
there
am
a
moving,
second?
yes.
There is a second. There is a motion and a second. You have the first opportunity to speak. I think you just took it and you were very...
We can't, folks, we can't do this if it's just accusation and allegation. The investigation has to be completed.
The motion is to table, which is non-debatable.
No, it's the merits of doing so. You can debate the merits of doing so. The merits of delaying.
Went under the issue.
This is a motion to defer this to the next meeting. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to deferring this to the next meeting?
I just have a question. Can I ask a question? Can you define private correspondence?
Well, I'm going to have to now because, and again, we tried to stay away from that, but others have brought it up. It was a departmental survey. Members of the department were asked it was just an internal thing for their own professional development on it, a series of questions about how are things for you here, what things are you involved in, et cetera. Kathy?
Can I speak to it?
Yeah, I'd like Kathy to speak to it.
What question are you posing for her to speak to?
Of what it's,
Yeah,
what
is
you're
it
talking
really
about.
private correspondence or public correspondence?
Right, and she can tell you exactly.
This is not where I wanted to be, and this was not what I wanted to do, but I really felt that the resolution spoke for itself. This was the title of what I wrote. I'm Kathy Llanos, the ESL department, okay? I take full responsibility for what I wrote. The title of this was the ESL Department Sanity Evaluation and Reflection, November 2014. We had just come off a long period of self-evaluation for program review. There are very few of us in the department anymore. We were literally worn to the bone. We're overextended, and it was kind of tough getting through it. And so we were evaluating, and this came from Kathy Wada, our department coordinator. It was an informal, I wouldn't even call it a survey. It was intended just for her. I have made copies if you would like to see this, because I think if you're going to talk about it, you should read the whole thing. It was personal. I know, but he asked if this was a personal correspondence. It is handwritten. I made copies. I told my dean I made the copies if you would like, because I wanted to be above board. It is a handwritten response by me, very personal, of the things, the questions on a scale of, okay, the one question that was brought up that I would like to clarify, but there are a lot of other ones that are very personal. Things like, what about Cypress College energizes you? I said, I listed all the things everything here is positive. The one question that was referred to is, what about being Cypress faculty drains you? What about being Cypress faculty drains you? I wrote one word, and that was Christy. Because we had been denied 5 times the ability to talk about the English 099. 5 times she had denied us that. So I wrote that. The only thing I'm embarrassed about is that I misspelled her name. That's the only thing that embarrasses me. But if you're going to talk about this, I think you should read the whole thing. Do I want all of my personal stuff and my talk about my grandbabies here? No. But I made copies because if you're going to discuss it, please look at the whole thing. Because I don't see this the way maybe other people, and, let me explain one other thing. Well, I know,
Kathy,
I've been
I
on
think Joel,
Senate.
not to put you on the spot, but could you clarify, I think what Joel wants to know is how it was stapled and how
Okay, I wrote this, was returning it to Kathy Waters. She had already left for the night. I had a night class. I finished it up. I put it in her box. I folded it in thirds. And I wrote Kathy Wada on the front, and I stapled it. I put it in what I thought was her box, and I think it went to the box below, but it ended up then, 2 days later, 40 copies, or how many there are in the Language Arts Division, photocopied on both sides with Kathy Wada's name, all turned in, all in clear envelopes for the entire division. These were put in everyone's box. Kathy didn't even get the original back. Somebody has the original, but it wasn't me and it wasn't her.
Thank you.
So,
Does that answer your question, Joel?
Can I pass it around?
Just tell me, private or public?
It was very private and very personal. I talk about my grandbabies. I mean, it doesn't get any more personal. I'm sorry.
The motion on the floor is to defer this to our next meeting. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to the deferral? Very well then, an opposition to the deferral.
Yes, I think for me, we are voting simply on, do you think it's an okay thing to copy and redistribute a piece of private mail? I can vote on that now.
Is there anyone else to speak in favor who hasn't already spoken to deferring this to the next meeting?
So, Kathy, I'm not happy hearing what happened. And the problem I have with, and why I'm in favor of deferral is not in terms of your intents. One, there's an investigation going on, I guess currently that is not resolved. So I'm uncomfortable for the Senate to take a position in principle, because the investigation is going on in terms of these behaviors. So that concerns me. Two, I'm looking at the actual resolution, and I see possibilities for an amendment as well to the resolution. And I don't know if this is, I'd have to defer to Pat, whether it's timely for me to even suggest that at this point. The other thing I want to say is the reason why I would like to see a deferral of this decision, besides, to me, what is a very concrete obstacle that the investigation hasn't fully taken place, is that another way of handling this is to actually create a subcommittee to explore options to bring resolution to this problem, and to recommend to the Senate how it's best done, how we could best bring resolution to this thing, because it's I would like to, if somebody in fact has done this, again, I know, Pat, I'm repeating myself. I would like to see it apologize.
Second. Mark, are you making a motion to refer this to subcommittee?
Yes.
Second. There is a second. Would you like to speak to the benefit of referring this to a subcommittee?
We already have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
This motion would supersede the other motion.
The motion on the floor is to defer this.
Okay, let's vote on that, then we'll vote on creating a subcommittee.
I don't
The
care.
question has been moved on the previous motion. All those in favor of moving this?
Who moved the question?
I move the question.
Second? The second came from over on this side to defer it to the next meeting. That's where the debate was at the time that he made a motion.
Yeah, I said you gotta deal with the one issue first. And I'm not sure that I understand a justification for deferring it. I think you have the information that you need on this. That there's an ongoing investigation, but that's designed to try to find out who did it. This really is focusing just on the action itself. Clearly, there has been an illicit photocopying and distribution. I don't know how else you can have it. Something that was from this. So that's what the issue is.
Our time constraints were
It's not
decided.
clear.
Please.
You are accusing
Please
that.
don't. Our time constraints were decided at the beginning of the meeting. Before Mark was suggesting this be moved to a subcommittee, the motion that was on the floor was to defer this to the next meeting. Let's move on that item so that we can move off of this agenda item because our time has expired. All those in favor of moving this to the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we're gonna have to do it by a hand vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. To defer it to the next meeting.
12 wins.
All those opposed to deferring this to the next meeting.
9.
The motion passes. It will be re-agendized for the next meeting. Moving on to the role of Senate in addressing department division issues. We have 5 minutes.
As if it was a perfect lead-in, let me pass this out to you. I'm addressing the Senate's role in resolving departmental and division disputes. It is a current path that we are on. There was public commentary that was raised recently, and I've actually included in this some of the data from that public commentary so we can talk about it. The Senate jurisdiction over these issues, we decided, was with our 10+1. The +1 is why we took it. And then specifically for the issue with the Language Arts Division, we have a presidential direction for it as well, which came from the minutes of our first meeting in the fall of last time. It says in our minutes that we all approved. He also stressed that the disagreements between the Reading and Language Arts departments need to be resolved. He hopes this will be done through a dialogue between the two departments, but also asserted that the issues were academic and professional and would ultimately fall under the purview of the Senate. He stated that the issue must be resolved. If anybody has shudders up their spine, it is because of the landscape that we are currently on and the path that we are being led down. And I am not convinced that this will not be resolved without the Senate having to impose a resolution. The reason why is because my back is broken for refereeing these things. And I've been refereeing it a lot. I'm willing to concede that I've been refereeing it a lot more than other people. But I just want to tell you, the Senate business, I found out through this great research, and then by adding the ones that have come since, that 13 of the 48 meetings that I have attended in this Senate have had the Language Arts Division's personal issues that have been brought up. 27.1%. When I was talking about too much Senate business, I thought it would max out at about 20. With this data, I found out I was 7.1% more pissed off, 7.1% more frustrated, 7.1% more sure of where we were going to be going with this. Now, the other thing is particularly because the acceptable standard is 0 of these. Look at what the rest of the divisions over those 46 meetings have provided. 0. Now, I did not just say that my back is broken because of the Senate business. I've been in program review at least 8 years, at least 2 full cycles where these issues came up. The last of those meetings, anybody who attended it will never forget it. And it is benignly as can be placed in our program review. We had great discussion about the wording that we would have to describe that event that occurred in our program review. The topic of reading proficiency requirements was raised. Boy, was it. However, the committee found that the issue was outside the scope of program review and referred back to the department. In essence, please resolve this, is what we were saying. Then, in every single curriculum committee meeting for the past year plus, I have had text messages, I have had emails, I have had phone calls, I have had personal visits to my office from members of the curriculum committee, from people who have curriculum before that committee, and most pressing from our curriculum chair. How do we navigate this issue? How do we do what we need to do, our actuarial work of being in the curriculum committee, when we have all of this outside stuff taking place? Our processes are being hijacked. There are classes that can be ready to be going, but they're not because they're being sidetracked by all of this stuff which is taking place. Our processes have changed because of this in curriculum, because of this problem between the 2 departments. There is classes that are ready to go. Our curriculum committee, because of the administrators on it, have said, no, everybody's got to get along to put those things through. That's not what our curriculum committee is supposed to do. That's not what our curriculum process is. And lastly, the educational master plan, which we are preparing to write again, 10-year plan. 2 other areas continue to be a problem when identifying departments. In the Language Arts Division, reading and English are 2 distinct departments with separate coordinators. However, courses taught in the 2 departments are offered under a single subject, English. We got to resolve these things, it says in the educational master plan. Senate meetings, program review, curriculum, and the educational master plan. My back's broken from it. So I go back to the president's comments. We really want that division to resolve this issue. I do not have much confidence in that. In fact, I have 7.1% less confidence than I had before. Is there any contrition? 27.1% was supposed to be acceptable. It was a bomb that was supposed to make me shut up that I've been dealing with this too much. It's ridiculous. That is a position that is laughable to the point to be mocked. And then I get, but we're a fully functioning division. I have one metric that I don't believe you met that with. Look under number A, under 2. I'm not saying that your courses aren't great, that you don't have great teachers there, but you have failed by that metric. You have mucked up our processes. And it is my contention that the only way this is going to be resolved is through us now. Now, before we impose something, I suggest, as Mark did, that maybe we do things as a committee, that we look into this as a lot of stuff, that maybe it becomes the basis for if there's ever any issues like this again. But again, I refer you to 2A. I think once we resolve this issue, we can put this one in mothballs.
So are you making a motion?
Yes, I move that we create a committee to address not only the issue between the 2 departments that we've seen in curriculum and whatnot, but also to address the issue that has been how our Senate should respond to the issue with their mailboxes.
So the motion, and I'll ask for a second in just a moment, would be to create a subcommittee to address the issues between these 2 departments and how the Senate should address them.
Exactly.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Fantastic. I think you did a great job telling us why you're in favor. Anyone opposed to the creation of a subcommittee?
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, I have to say, I don't understand, one, the involvement, and then two, I think your characterization of what's going on in our division is very wrong. We've resolved most of the problems. So,
Except that there's something.
In opposition to the
as
motion.
departments, as a division, we've had votes on all the major issues and resolved the issues. So the fact that a couple people don't agree, what do you do in that situation if a couple people don't agree but the rest do? In our minds, if you go to everybody in our departments, English department, reading department, ESL, we have agreed. We've resolved the problems. There are a few people that don't agree. Do we continue? I mean, you're worried about wasting time. Do you quote, waste time if 2 or 3 people aren't okay with what the rest have decided? So I strongly disagree with how you're characterizing what's happening in our division.
The motion on the floor is to create a subcommittee that would address the issues between the two departments and how the Senate should respond. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor who has not spoken? Yes, sir.
Well, these are my 2 concerns, and I mean this in a collegial manner. 99 as it's written, and by the way, I can report that because it'll be in the minutes anyway, so I don't think that there's any problem with that. 99 came up again to the curriculum committee as to whether it should
Point of
move.
information.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this discussion directed at specifics of language arts curriculum and policies, or is this I'm not clear on the topic right now. If we are going to debate language arts issues, I think that needs to be agendized so that we can share the information about those issues. I'm sorry, Mark, to interrupt.
No, I see that.
The motion on the floor would be to create a subcommittee to address the issues between the two departments, it's not specific, and how the Senate should respond to that. So that is the motion on the floor. And our time for this item is up, so is there a call for the question?
Call the question.
Is there a second?
I would like to
Are all those in favor of the call for the question, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Any abstentions? We have 1, 2, 3 abstentions?
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Okay.
Very emotional for us, so I don't know what's going on.
The call would end debate on the motion to create a subcommittee. So are you in favor of ending debate on the motion to create a subcommittee? That's the vote that you would be taking now. It's a call for the question that would end debate. If you are not in favor of ending debate, vote down the call for the question. So all those in favor of calling the question say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to calling the question say nay.
Nay.
I have 3. Any others? 4. Any abstentions? The call has been made. The motion
Point of
that...
clarification though. To me, the way I'm hearing it, I'm not sure exactly what is being voted on, because, for example, we're talking about a subcommittee on internal disputes. Then we also talked about including this resolution as part of it. How do we define internal disputes, et cetera? And then the second part that I'm not clear on, we're going to vote on this in a moment. I think we need to know, what is this subcommittee supposed to be doing? What is the charge being given to this subcommittee? And I need that clarified before I can vote, and my guess is other people would too.
Folks, we decided at the beginning of this meeting we would limit debate on these items. Our time for debate has ended. This item has no resolution. It will move to the next agenda.
We called the question on the,
And
so you have a vote.
except we also ran out of time, and when you run out of time, that takes precedent.
Okay. So
So
the percentage will increase to next week.
moving on to new business, this is an item we have to address. The funding allocation for new courses and programs came before the Planning and Budget Committee. we must decide as a Senate whether or not we would support funding new courses and programs. This is not an issue of what the new course or program is. It is not an issue of how much funding. It is what we would like our level of support to be for faculty who are proposing new courses and programs. The issue was brought up last time. We need some sort of a resolution from the Senate on where we want to go with this. Planning and Budget would like to know how we're going to vote.
Academic Senate's never been involved in that before, have they?
We have a vote on Planning and Budget, and all Planning and Budget items come before them, and our two votes do, in fact, make a difference. They try to work on the consensus model, so if we vote against it, they keep working on it until there is consensus. So this isn't an item that is going to go away. We must decide what level of support we would like to have.
So I would need clarification, because right now we propose new courses and programs all the time as updating programs and that sort of thing. If there are no real costs associated with it, but if we're going to propose a new program like a baccalaureate degree that maybe has additional costs, that seems like it would be a planning and budget issue. So to me, there are two separate things. Like within the course of normal curriculum development, we propose new courses all the time. So how is this different? Like if it has really clear financial implications, then yes, maybe we can talk about that. But otherwise, we don't want to weigh in on everybody's course development.
Right. Which is the question that is being posed before the Senate. Do we want to set a threshold on what we would support? If you put a dollar sign on it, and we say, well, we'll support it if it's less than this, but won't support it if it's more than that. It's the concept. If a faculty member, if a program is through the entire process, they have the courses, they have the faculty ready to teach it, do we support giving the instructional equipment, facilities, any other supplies that they would need in order for it to be taught? You're right, it hasn't been an issue before.
Is this for just the new innovation programs and the innovation grants? Or are you talking the entire curriculum model?
The entire curriculum model. Where does Senate land on this issue? We need to know.
I thought when you propose a new course or program, part of the requirement is supposed to show where the resources are coming if you have expenses. Shouldn't that just go through the normal process?
It did, and the course was approved, and they're ready to launch this course. Now the question is there a dollar sign for which we're not okay with launching a course? And I don't want people to make this an issue of a dollar sign. Do we support innovation in our courses and programs so much so that Senate would be able to vote in favor of appropriating whatever resources are necessary to make this program or course fly?
You can't.
It's impossible.
You cannot do this. I mean, you're taking a pile of money. There's a certain pile of money, and you're basically going around allocating that pile of money by anyone who comes up, and it might be, and I'm not saying that we don't come up with great stuff, but the reality of it is you're in the queue then. And if your course or your program comes up and they don't have the funds at that time, they won't do it, or they may do it, and it depends. And I think that there's too much chance for funding things that the division or a certain area or perhaps the district wants, which would not necessarily benefit or to be the advantage of the students or the faculty.
I know this is a tough one, but in the master database form, there is a field that asks if there are special funding needs, and it's also duplicated, a narrow, short narrative paragraph on contextualizing that in the curriculum handbook. So in one case, a course came through where it said no, there were no special funding requirements for that course. None. It was none. There was no request for that. That course, consequently, was a subject of conversation, and planning and budget did have needs that were, in the thousands of dollars to make that course possible if it was to be conducted on this campus, at a site on our campus. So that is a contradiction of the protocol that we normally follow. That doesn't mean that you couldn't consider it, but it's a contradiction of the policy of how it should be handled through the curriculum committee context. If you said you had no need for special funding, then you had no need for special funding. The curriculum committee didn't consider that possibility because there was no request for it. Does that mean that it makes it impossible for there to be some other context to consider, to allow for that after the fact, even though it came to the committee with no request for it, for the division dean or for the VP to assess, and for people that can actually contextualize what those costs might be? That's another consideration. So the thing I'm concerned about is a priori that are you suggesting that we should set up some context outside of that form of determination and evaluation? And that's hard for us because it seems to me the people and entities for that evaluation would be the dean of that area, the department coordinator, it would be Karen Kant's position to assess what the budgetary considerations for that innovation and curriculum would be, to contextualize that at planning and budget in coordination with the curricular process. But in one case, and I don't want to point fingers, people make mistakes, and one course was brought through without defining that. And then the request came up, planning and budget. But that course had not, in master database, the curriculum committee assessed that area effectively. I mean, I feel bad for them, but that's what happened.
Folks, it is past the 5 o'clock hour. Our meeting is done if there is a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll see you next time.
It gets to the point where you tell the students leave all electronic devices at home or in a box or in your car, or worst case, we take responsibility during the class for those, which could open us up to problems. So I just want to seed it a little bit that you might start thinking about what you think a good policy would be as far as students coming into your class with any type of electronic device.
Thanks, Jesse. Any others? All right, then let's move on to special reports. Associated students, Tanya.
Yes, ma'am. The results are in.
And?
I am your newly elected vice president of student. We also have 4 new senators, 4 new activities coordinators, and Ms. Tiana Buddes is our new student trustee. And Ryan Jostenbaum is our executive vice president. So the results, it was all decided and went over, and special elections, all that good gravy. And final done, we're in. Okay, thank you.
Any others?
Also, I want to, tomorrow is Kinder Caminata, where we have the kindergartners come in honor of Cesar Chavez. And we're looking forward to that event on tomorrow from like 8 to 12. We'll have a lawn full of children. So we look forward to that on tomorrow. And I want to make a special plea to those of you that are any faculty. My goal is to have as many clubs active on campus as we possibly can. And if someone approaches you as being an advisor, would you please take advantage of that opportunity? I'd appreciate it. In honor of Women's Recognition Month, our president is hosting she's got ballots going out, Women's Recognition Awards. And I look to see some of your names on here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. United faculty, are you going to report for a United faculty?
No report.
No report, okay. Staff development.
Okay, we just completed our second funding cycle. The award letters haven't gone out yet because Bob needs to double check them. And then the final funding period will close on April 10th. It was originally April 8th, but because we have an event, a district staff development event on that day, we decided to change it to the 10th. So as soon as I get the award letters out, I'll send out another call for more applications. for the last funding period for this year. And we increased, we went, I think, from 6 applicants in the first funding period.
What that would mean and how realistic that would be. He said, well, as you know, CTE programs go through Perkins and through a number of grants that they have to apply for. It's a big paper trail. It's a big investment of time for department coordinators and CTE programs up and down the state, as well as the divisional deans. And one of the considerations is, why do we have to go through this paper mill? It's very difficult for those to be vetted. It takes a lot of work for the people that are the vetting agencies, including the Chancellor's office, to see who should get the funding, who and how much funding they should get. Why not just consider the possibility of changing the ratio of apportionment and perhaps eliminating, using those in place of or in lieu of those kinds of grants, because they see growth in CTE programs being long-term, and this grant writing they do on a yearly basis is absorbing a lot of time. So anyway, to cut to the chase, I'm going to pass out to you the first draft of, let's say, proposals, considerations, and objectives that CTE faculty are considering as spearheaded by the ASCCC. This is a draft that's going to go through a revision as a consequence of these regional meetings, but this is what Tina and I and Kathleen Ryland saw, which I thought was very informative, gave me an idea of what CTE faculty and the ASCCC are thinking about in terms of the future of CTE programs, their funding, supporting counseling and instructional development. Yes. Oh, yeah, and also we have a 2-for-1 coming up for Curriculum Institute. A 2-for-1, like possible, and by the way, we have show opening into the woods. Yes. So think about getting tickets to see that show. Anyway, see, I put that little plug in there. Okay, so we were told we could do 2-for-1. So somebody from CTE faculty goes with me, they get to go for free, and you have to pay for me. So I thought that was kind of cool. So my recommendation to the Senate at this point, I'm not making a formal motion at this point, but it would be great to think about maybe having your curriculum chair, your campus articulation officer, a CTE faculty, and Donald Landis, who's a system specialist, go to this summer's Curriculum Institute, which I'm sure is going to have a focus on CTE. Okay. You and I we attended a meeting in the President's Conference Room. Was it this week? Boy, everything blends. It was last week with?
To see their own name used in a hurtful, degrading way on a department survey. I asked the Senate, which of the actions carries more weight? The humiliation of a colleague on a department survey, or the fact that someone found this humiliating evidence and copied it for all to see? Recently, the now former entertainment chief of Sony Pictures had her emails hacked and publicized. She responded with a public apology. She graciously stated that although she does not condone the hacking, she recognizes that her emails were hurtful and she apologized for them. I have had no such apology about the hurtful and degrading remark about me on the ESL survey. I am not demanding an apology now. I don't believe in doing this. I only ask that during the discussion, each senator imagine how he or she would feel to find their own name used in a degrading way on another department survey, regardless of how that information was made known. Thank you. See you later.
Anyone else for public commentary? Seeing none, any faculty announcements and invitations? Yes, sir?
Faculty announcement. I received from our dean an update about Gary Zager, and I want to let everybody know that Gary is planning on returning to school after spring break on April 6th. He is feeling very good, much better, much stronger, and our division can't wait for him to come back. And I wanted to make sure that we shared that with you.
Fantastic. Yes, ma'am.
I have an announcement. United Faculty is having their elections, and I hope you all vote
Very well.
by the 27th.
By the 27th, okay.
They will be sending them via, if you have not, I haven't received mine yet, but I mean, they sent out the ballots via mail, so they should be coming.
I didn't respond to the agenda because I found something at FISH meeting yesterday. I'll add to next meeting, and it has to do with, is there a company policy on electronic device? And the question came up because the watches and everything now, and what do you do about,
Jane Walker's alternate is in attendance, and it's Tina Johansson.
Thank you.
Any other alternates come in? Very well then. Let's move on to approval of the minutes from February 26th. If you've had a chance to review them, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Accept.
Second.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections?
I was already given a couple by Rebecca.
Are they
And
substantive changes?
No,
or-
they're spelling in a duplication of something.
Okay. Any other changes to the minutes? All those in favor of approving our minutes from our last Senate meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we will move on to public commentary. Do we have anyone here to address the Senate?
Yes.
Why, what do you have for us today, ma'am?
The Senate will be asked to vote today on a resolution concerning an issue in language arts. Because I am not a senator and I will not be here for the discussion, I want to share my comments. This issue is not only about the photocopying and distribution of an ESL department survey in the language arts faculty boxes. This issue is also about the hurtful and cruel comment written about an English department faculty member on the ESL department survey. Specifically, this hurtful and degrading comment was written about me. Any discussion that does not include the impact of the hurtful use of my name on a department survey is a form of silencing. The cry for collegiality and the condemnation of so-called illicit behavior rings hollow because it does not resolve the fact that I have been openly degraded. However, I have not attempted to bring a resolution to the Senate condemning this action. I have not taken up the Senate's time with this issue, nor have I attempted to use our 10+1 as a tribunal on faculty behavior. If the Senate body deliberates on this issue, I would ask that the senators consider how they would feel.
That we held in November up to 20, and we had an adjunct person and several, across disciplines, so all the way from auto tech to social science to health science. So I think we're on the upswing there in terms of getting the interest going. March 21st is the strategic conversation here on campus, so I encourage you to attend if you can. If you didn't register, there is walk-in registration on that day if you want to participate. March 24th. April 8th, the district staff development is holding a technology fair, and I can't remember the name of it, but the sign-up is on the district staff development calendar sign-up. It is emerging technology used in the classroom and in instruction, and some of our own people will be roundtable facilitators, as well as people from SCE and Fullerton. It's from, I think, 3:30 to 6 o'clock, I believe. And that's my report for today.
Did you get enough facilitators for the strategic conversation? There was a call that went out.
Yes, I believe we did. We may have more than we need, but, last minute things happen, so that's a good deal.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Curriculum committee.
Are you going to speak to the meeting that we had relative to baccalaureate?
You go right ahead.
Okay, so first of all, I have good news to report, which is that we are completely in compliance. We had a email letter from the Chancellor's office. We have completed all 19 of the ADTs that we could possibly offer on this campus. They're all active. Last one is coming through, which is for journalism. We're completely in compliance. There are no other ADTs at this point in time that we have programs that would support an ADT. So we are finished with that task for the moment. Tina and I, Kathleen, went to a CTE conference in Palomar, and the conference's focus was related to task force on workforce development, job creation, and strong economy. And these were a series of regional conversations about related to goals relative to CTE programs, consideration of reconsidering perhaps even the apportionment model ratio of how we fund CTE. I talked to Steve Donnelly about that. I said, what do we really mean by the pragmatized